Welcome to Beyond Hormones, the Business of Wellness, the podcast for hormone and functional medicine providers who want a thriving, predictably profitable practice and maybe a little less stress along the way. Hi, I'm your host, Jody Lane, and I've worked with lots of clinics in marketing, sales, and business development, and I have seen what works and what doesn't. And here's what I believe. Hormone and wellness care should be available to everyone who wants it. And while providers know the medicine, many struggle with the business side of their cash practice. And that's where I come in. See, this podcast is here to share real strategies, real stories, things you can implement in your practice right away. So I am so glad you're here. Come on, let's go. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Beyond Hormones, the Business of Wellness. Today's conversation is a special one for me. You all know I talk a lot about leadership and scaling and mindset and building a clinic that actually supports your life instead of consuming it. And a big reason I think the way I do about those topics is because of today's guest. I am joined by business strategist and marketer Dan Kuschell from Breakthrough 3X. Dan has worked with thousands of entrepreneurs across industries, helping them simplify their focus, strengthen their leadership, and scale in a way that's both profitable and sustainable. And for the past several months, I've personally been working with him and his team. So this conversation is not theoretical for me. It's actually pretty personal. What I love about Dan's approach is that he doesn't just talk about marketing tactics or growth hacks. He talks about identity. He talks about seasons of life. He talks about building a business by design instead of by default. And for those of you in the hormone, functional, and wellness space, this is especially important because you were trained to be excellent clinically, but nobody trained you to think like a CEO. So today we're going to dive into some pretty important topics. Why that identity shift is so hard, how to decide what role you should actually be playing in your clinic, why work-life balance might be the wrong goal, and how to scale without burning yourself out. I am so excited for this one. Come on, let's jump in. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Beyond Hormones, the Business of Wellness podcast. I have yet another amazing guest today that I know I say this every time, but I am so excited to interview this person. But before I even let him speak, I want to tell you a little bit about this man. So today's guest is someone whose work has actually had a real impact on how I think about business leadership and growth. Dan Kuschell is a serial entrepreneur, business strategist, and coach who has spent decades helping purpose-driven entrepreneurs build scalable, profitable businesses with clarity and alignment. Dan is known for his ability to blend strategy, mindset, and marketing in a way that's both practical, but also deeply human. He challenges entrepreneurs to stop chasing growth through hustle alone and instead lead at a higher level with intention, responsibility, and resonance. And I'm sure we're going to find out the why behind all of that in just a few minutes. He's worked with thousands of business owners across industries, myself included. We've been working together for about 7 or 8 months, even though I've been following you longer than that. He's helped them simplify their message, strengthen their leadership, and create businesses that support both impact and lifestyle. For those of you listening that are in the medicine and wellness industry, Dan's insights are especially powerful because they speak directly to the challenge of both being a healer and an entrepreneur. So I am so excited to introduce Mr. Dan Kuschell. Hi.
Hi, Jody. It's great to be with you.
It's great to be with you too. We were just talking because typically we have our company meetings on Thursdays because we've been using Breakthrough 3X for a while. And here we are on a Thursday. Not sure when you're listening, guys, but it's Thursday for us. So I'm super excited. I'm going to dive right in because we have a lot of great information to get out. So here's my first question for you, Dan.
All right.
Most medical providers are clinically brilliant, but they struggle as business owners. So why do you think the identity shift from provider to entrepreneur is so challenging? And what would you say to a provider to help them get through that?
Wow. So there's layers of this, Jody. And I know you and your team teach some of this as well. I think that one way to look at it, so I'm big into movies, right? So yeah, I don't know what's your favorite movie, Jody? I'm curious.
Me? It's
Yeah,
called The American President.
American President, right? So in the movie business, there's roles that people play.
Right.
They choose to play, certain roles. And then that also can mean they choose not to play other roles, right? So,
Yeah.
American president. So you've got actors and actresses, you've got directors, and then you've got the studio, right? Or the main production studio.
Hmm.
So we can play whatever role is best suited for us. And I think the problem is education teaches us to isolate a role as more of an employee than as the producer of the studio, like a James
Right.
Cameron, so to speak. And so, but guess what? We can play, like Tom Cruise plays an actor, he plays a director, he plays the movie studio at different times in his career. So, one of the ways to look at it is how do we position ourselves to be more of the role we want more of? Now, if we
Mhm.
love doing the thing we do, like being the technician, like being the one in the practice, and depending on what types of functional, we work with a lot of chiropractors, as you know, we work with a lot of people in functional medicine with different high cash value services, from injections to peptides to all kinds of other things that are alternative health approaches.
Mhm.
You don't have to be the one delivering it. Like, you can be the one that imagines it and or produces it, and then have doctors, nurse practitioners delivering or fulfilling on it. So I think it's number one, getting clear, what role do you want to play? But sometimes the unlearning
Mhm.
is as important as the learning. So unlearning, do the thing, versus, oh, I can run the business side of it. So that would be a couple things, Jody. Overall, just depending on where you want to go, we can go from there.
Yeah, that's so great. So, I see a lot when practitioners open their own clinic, which most of them come from an insurance-based world. And so being an
Yep.
entrepreneur is like a brand new thing. Or maybe they owned an insurance-based practice, but they didn't have to do all the other stuff because insurance companies just sent them, their patients. And so they start off and they have to do all those roles. At some point, they have to really think through what role makes the most sense for them. And as they do that and their clinic starts to grow, what do you think is what are some of the telltale signs for them that they have found their sweet spot per se in their clinic?
Yeah, I think again, it's know thyself,
Yeah.
right? And different people, one is realize what is possible. Because if we're stuck in a one-on-one model, right, or where we're rejuvenated by delivering a one-on-one model. It's all perspective, right? It's like, what do I see? What do you see in our vision of things? So, for example, and again, I know you teach some of this. I might have a different way to communicate it, but some people, why did somebody become a doctor? It wasn't always to become multimillionaire empire builder. It was because they likely wanted to help people, right? Had something happen, like the why behind it, and wanted to make a bigger difference or a bigger impact. And maybe along the way, income played some role, but it was mostly probably about helping make an impact, making a difference in people's lives and their lifestyle, health, etc. So that's a place to play, like you teach, right? You've grown, I'll call it, beyond the normal practice, in the practice, beyond being in the practice. Well, what would it be like if you could have 50 practices across the country? One of our clients, Dr. Scott, he's got practices that are licensing what he does all over the country. You have people licensing to a degree, and I'm using licensing as a
Sure.
very loose term, right?
Right.
Using your technologies, your strategies to help them build practices nationally, because it's a proven system, almost like a franchise that allows them to get free up, and they can stay in their sweet spot of, helping people. But you can bring in a technology like yours or strategies like yours, Jody, where they're able to have a bigger impact, and then maybe start to see the possible. Oh, what if I went from one location to two? How would that change the game? How can I go from 2 to 20? How do I go from 20 to 200 if someone is driven that way, right? So I think it's know thyself. And then also, I hope that as you're watching this, and if you're following Jody's work and her team's work, is that you're insatiably curious to ask yourself, what if?
Yeah.
What could I do? What could happen if I chose to play a bigger role. And then find the people like Jody, her team, groups like ours and others that can help
Yeah.
you, realize that.
Totally. When you said 50 practices, I immediately had an anxious moment. I'm sure some of the listeners had like an anxious moment. Like the idea of getting that big almost seems scary. And because I know you so well, I'm going to put you on the spot because I
Okay.
know that you had a point in your career where you had a little bit of burnout, overwhelm, and maybe even some health issues as a result of it. Can you share maybe a little bit about that and kind of what you realized about work and life balance that helped you, kind of like be healthy, but also then succeed even greater?
Yeah, I'd love to say it was all by design, right? There's, this idea, build business, build a life by design. And truthfully, I built a piece of my life called the business world more by design than everything else. I gave, truthfully, the short version is, Jody, and you know me well, so I'll just dive right into it. I gave my health leftovers. I was over 85 pounds heavier than I am today. I gave my marriage leftovers. I was starting on the path. My kids were so young, but I was heading in that direction to give them what leftovers. And it was an internal struggle, right? And it was like fighting myself. And then long and the short, because I had also had, I'll call it bad workaholism, the respectable addiction habits for about 10 years, where I only slept about 2 to 3 hours a day for 10 years straight, I burn out.
Oy.
And I hit a wall, ended up in a hospital for multiple days, 4 days. On the third day, I had a heart procedure and so on, had to sign a disclaimer. It said I had a 1 in X chance in dying, and it scared me. My son was just born a few weeks earlier. My daughter was 2 at the time, and it scared me. And here I was, I invested millions of dollars in training and personal development. And from a business point of view, I mean, at that time I had a business that was doing 20 million a year. I had, almost 200 employees, and things on the outside looked great. But there was, I was not having a holistic marriage. I was, giving my health leftovers. There were a lot of other things that were way out of integration, way out of balance. It was the business drove all the decisions, and it was like the tail wagging the dog. And I think God kind of, for me, gave me a wake up call, tapped me on the shoulder. I wasn't paying attention, and then hit me upside the head with a 2x4 in the
Doesn't
heart.
it always happen that way?
Yeah. And I don't think it has to, though. Right. And that's the quest I'm on. I was able to sell 2 companies. That led to me deciding, like, what did I really want outside the business? What did I not want? Who am I? Right. And who did I want to be for my kids? Not, the label of like CEO or, person, TV personality, radio personality. It was like more basic things, like of how do I want my kids to know me as a dad, as a husband, as a spouse, as a friend, active in the community. And I kind of took what I would call a introspective approach and looked mentally, physically, socially, spiritually, emotionally beyond the business, and also for marriage, for my relationships with my kids. And getting clear on those things actually made it better for the business. And then, I don't know, but it was about roughly 2 years after that incident in the hospital that I ended up selling my 2 companies, both 8-figure companies. I was able to free myself up, and then I was working hard on the other stuff. And I realized, you know what? Life balance is bullshit. Now, I don't believe in it. It can be integrated, though.
Yeah.
And so, because if you're going to be amazing, like one of the top in the world in anything, you've got to commit to it. And I learned that in sports. You're going to have some obsessive times. But the key is to recognize, just like sports, which I didn't realize in business, and now this is the differentiation. As you're watching right now or listening, maybe you've experienced some of what I'm describing, maybe not, and God bless you if you haven't. Hopefully you can learn from my mistakes and avoid them. But in the highest level of professions like sports, which is high intensity, hard driven, performance based, which business is a lot that way.
Hmm.
Doing what we do is a lot that way. There's in season, there's post season, there's spring training, and then there's off season.
Yeah.
Yet most normal people don't look at their life that way. And
Right.
I think that now serves me really well, because I do now set up my life to look at preseason, in season, off season, and postseason, and create the seasons by design, not by accident. And it's helped me get healthier, more energy, better relationships with my wife, with my kids, and it's scheduled and it's by design and all these sorts of things. So those are a couple things, Jody, that the
Yeah. And
wake up call was a big part of that decision process.
you sort of enrolled your family into your life too, like into your business life. I mean, I've been to your workshops. I've seen your wife. I've seen your son. They're all there showing up because you didn't separate it. And I think that's really inspiring. And thank you for sharing that. And that's one of the reasons I love listening to you, because your authenticity is just transparent. Like, you just come out and say it as it is, but also you can really hear the why behind what you do and why you do it, which is what I'm going to bring up next, which is this amazing little document that I have in my hand. If you're watching on YouTube, then you'll see I'm holding up Dan's book, Direct Response Branding, which I mean, I've read a lot of marketing books in my life, a lot of business books, and I thought this one was particularly phenomenal. So I was hoping that you could share a little bit, like, what inspired you to write this book? Because education and teaching people is at the forefront of what you do every day. So why this book, and what we have to do?
Yeah, so this is I think the fifth book I've written, and it was designed to be a short, quick book, like a 60-page, 70-page
It
book.
is
Like,
not a short, quick book.
no, and then one thing led to another. In fact, give me a second here, because people ask me, well, how do you write your books? And so the way I write my books is probably different than most, but this was actually me writing my book.
Oh my goodness, that is a lot of yellow legal pad papers in
Yes.
hand.
And so what I did is I made a commitment to sit down for a minimum of 30 minutes, 5 days a week for 90 days. That was the original plan, and penciled it in and scheduled it in and that sort of thing, because I did want to take my ideas, Jody, from here
Yeah,
and here and put them out. But originally it was designed to be, about 60, 80 pages. And then, one thing led to another, and one story led to another. And then I was like, oh, well, what would make that even better? And so on and so on and so on. And next thing I knew, this thing had become hundreds of pages, right? And, you could open up the book and show, but like, it's over 340 pages. And
let's
it's a
see. It
balance
is.
of
Yep.
strategy combined with tactics, like a show and tell. And there's all kinds
Yeah.
of visuals. I also, to a degree, wrote it for someone like me who's a visual learner.
Yes.
And, while it has depth to it, and it is certainly got a lot of depth, it's got a lot of examples that literally someone could go in there and copy, model, and paste and put it in place, which was by design. On top of that, there's all kinds of extra bonuses built into the thing on the back end. So it turned it from I'll call it a small, I just want to get something done that's quality that will have an impact, that I looked at it deeper and went, well, what if I could make this something that would stand the test of time, was good 20 years ago, would be good today, and will be good in 20 years from now beyond me.
Yeah.
And that ultimately is how the decision came to go from the smaller version to the bigger version, and then settle on the bigger version. And now we've got other iterations of this coming out for, home service
Oh,
professionals,
cool.
for medical practices, et cetera, et cetera. There's a whole series that we're building into this that will be happening over the next several years, as we've been able to work with a lot of people in these very specialty industries, and then be able to share those specific nuances. So
Super
those are a
cool.
couple of things.
Well, I love that. So you are a very generous human being. You are, they in the industry we call it swipe files, right? Like, you give somebody the basic framework of messaging, and then you take it as a client or as a freebie and just kind of work with it. So knowing that, and I don't want the medical folks out there to have to wait for the iteration, what is one thing you can share with a clinician that their focus is the medicine, but they need to find a way to share about themselves online. They need to create that sort of character, so to share with other people what they're capable of. Is there any kind of trick you can give somebody, how they take no experience of doing any messaging to actually putting that out there appropriately?
Yeah, a version, and there's many, but one version is to, be thinking in terms of how can you have a one to many impact,
Hmm.
right? And then one of the simplest things to do is to share, like, why are you doing what you're doing?
Hmm.
Like, what is the purpose? What's the backstory? I grew up in the inner city of Detroit. We were on welfare as a family. My dad got laid off from the big companies he was in. Then he started two businesses and failed. And we went through bankruptcy. We went through the welfare process. We had lights on and off, and electricity on and off, and gas on and off. And like, it was tough. And part of my, I'll call it the instigation beyond sports, Jody, that inspired me to want to go build businesses for myself. Control, of course, came out of that pain, right? Is suffering.
Right. Of course.
So many times the solutions are out of some version, but sharing that with people, right? And so as you're watching or listening, is think of like your why behind it and be vulnerable and be genuine in why, but and also go deeper. Because as a doctor, as a medical professional, sometimes we put our lab coat on and suddenly become this very stoic, lack emotion. I don't want to stereotype, but I've just worked with so many hundreds of doctors and
Sure.
thousands of doctors all over the country that at times it's almost like a front or like an armor that gets put on because we think this is how I'm supposed to be. And the more we can just be like I'll speak about my marriage, damaging confession, cautionary tale. I've got a lot of imperfections. You've met my wife, T.
No, you're
So
perfect.
yeah, yeah, I wish. She will tell you, like, he's a bull in a china shop. He only knows two speeds. He's either 100 or off. There's no middle gear, and that can freak people out. Like and number three is she'll say his intensity for some is just a little much. And so,
Okay.
but I've learned that about myself, and I know these things to be true. So it allows me to know, number one, know myself, and I also am able to work with people better because I'm just self-aware. But we have videos like of me describing some of this. So it's the why and showing people the great side of you, but also the imperfections too. If you sat down as you're watching right now, and a great exercise, I learned this from a guy named Joe Polish, who's also been a client of ours in Genius Network and his company. But he says, hey, what are the top 10 coolest things about you? Put a list together. And many people have a hard time. I did when I first did this 2 decades ago. It was very difficult to be thinking, from a pride, ego point of view, whatever, because I've always been more like wanting to give it to everybody else. And then as I got to understand those things and got more comfortable in my own skin, Joni, the other side of it is, okay, what are some of the mistakes? What are the cautionary tales? What are the damaging confessions that you could share? And then, like, you literally can share context of both sides of those in a series of videos that becomes it makes you different than your competition because
Mhm.
many of them are not going to allow themselves to be vulnerable, especially in today's day and age, especially in a medical profession. But also it makes us real, right? In the process, it makes us more approachable, more. I don't believe in this old adage, and as you're watching right now, and we talk about it in the book, Jody, as you know, and I think you really resonated with this too. Is there's an old adage in business/marketing that says to get people to buy from you, they got to know you, like you, and trust you, and that's BS. Boulder Dash. No, they don't. They don't need to like you. They need to know you because if they don't know you, they're not going to you. They need to respect you that you can solve a problem. Now, as a doctor, most of the time you have that assumed piece of it. But there's many people who go to doctors, they could give a shit less
Yeah.
about they like the doctor. And that's
Right.
part of the problem, right? Is lack of emotion, lack of empathy, et cetera, et cetera. And patients complain about it. So being aware of that, you can start to use this to your advantage in a healthy way and make a bigger difference. So no, they got to know you, they got to respect you as an authority, and then they've got to trust that you have their best interest in mind. And then likability, Jody, as you know, we've talked about, usually will come with it as a strategic byproduct, but not because we're leading with it like so many false prophets in marketing and business because they've been repeating this for the last 100 years of what he said, what she said, it's like outdated medical information, right?
Right.
Don't just buy what people say, what people said 100 years ago. This is proven science in all relations. They got to know you, respect you, trust you, and then that usually creates some likability, and then people will try. Like, oh, I'll give it a try. Why not? Why not you,
Right.
Jody? Why not work with you? You're amazed. Oh my God, you help hundreds of other clinics across the country. You've helped clinics grow by 7 figures. Why wouldn't I at least try? And so the whole key to this is let people see the good side, but also let them see some of the, I just gave an example. Also, I have ADD, is I just went into an ADD moment right here, just being myself. And that's the
Yeah.
other side. Let people see you for who you are. T would say his warts and all, however you would describe that. However, as you're watching for yourself, you would describe it.
Right.
It's scary, by the way. By the way, it's a little scary. Like when I had coaches for years talk to me about this. And I resisted and I resisted and I resisted. And I got tired of trying to, this whole adage of fake it till you make it, which I actually have in one of my first books from 25 years ago. And I do believe to a degree of that, but it's changed today is that, why am I with my wife, T? I started to mention this about 8 minutes ago. Uh, it, the reason that I'm with my wife, T, is she gives me the freedom to be myself.
Yeah.
And that's like in business, like if you're working with Jody and her team, you will find that she has and her team has an ability to allow you the freedom to be yourself, but also call you on your stuff to challenge you to get to that next level. And that's what great mentors, great advisors, right? Great strategy is really all about. And so as you're watching or listening right now, I hope that you can find whether it's Jody, whether it's us, whether it's somebody, even your family, your friends that give you the freedom to truly be yourself, but still challenge you
Yeah.
to play at a bigger level too. So those are a couple.
I don't know. You may not know this, but so Alex Hormozy, I love his podcast.
Yeah.
I listen to him all the time. I read his books, all that stuff. His last podcast he just posted was with Tony Robbins. Have you heard that one yet?
Nope.
Okay.
Mm-mm.
Tony asks him, "What is it about your wife that you fell in love with?" And he said verbatim, "She lets me be myself." So clearly, the greatest relationships, and as you said, whether they're romantic relationships, business relationships, I mean, I felt that way about our relationship. Like you guys guide accelerated medical practices in where we should, what platforms we should be on, what target audience we should be. But you gave us the open freedom to share authentically why we are doing what we're doing, how we do it in a specific way, and, our failures along the way, which people need to know that you fail sometimes because that makes you real.
That's right. Yeah, I think even like, as we work together at some point in our relationship, we share with our clients, Jody, hey, our team's going to make mistakes here and there. We're
Yeah.
going to do our best to minimize or not make them, but it's not whether we make them, it's the one that we don't repeat the same one again, and that what you can count on is we'll own it and work to
Yeah.
make it right.
Yeah.
And that's all business, right? Now, in a high stakes game like medical, like there's a perfectionism. This is also one of the big problems with, business, marketing, all these sorts of things is as a medical practitioner, like you have like a 0.000001% allowance for imperfection. So it's a perfection driven model education. However, here's the truth. If you're going to pursue business, plain business at a bigger level and also marketing at a bigger level, there are imperfections. You test, like even the best in the world. You brought up Tony Robbins, you brought up Alex, some of our other clients, Joe Polish, Dean Graziosi, Alex Mondozian, these people we've worked closely with over time in front of, in masterminds and in closed doors. I've heard them say in one way or another this: for every one winner we get, we've got about 7 to 8 losers. However, for somebody that's perfection driven, this is also a big thing that holds a lot of businesses back. What happens is we try to get it perfect, and that takes 4 or 5 or 6 or 9 or 12 months. And then we launch, and then it's not perfect. And then, okay, to reiterate, let's go back to the drawing board. And now many people won't even go to the drawing board. They'll just go, this doesn't work, and they'll stop. So they're
Right.
out. Then for those who
Right.
keep going, they go back to the drawing board and try to like create perfection again. And maybe now instead of a year of development, it's 6 more months. And so now we're 18 months in. Well, what if we just got through the call it the losses, or had the mental side of it, the mental game of this, which is what it takes to get through the loss like in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Be more focused on progress over perfection. Be more focused on getting it done and out and tested and get feedback faster to iterate quicker, that literally you get through the 7 versions in like, 60 days, 90
Yeah.
days done the way like we like it. And I know you are an advocate for this too. So those are a couple perspectives
Yeah.
related to these sorts of things that I think can help all businesses and also especially in medical.
I want to bring it back to something else that you said about imperfection or perfection for doctors. So there is no perfection in doctors either. So especially in the wellness world, we all have the same looking body, but they function completely different.
Yes.
And that's why there's functional medicine. That's why there are hormone experts. And so, even in the authenticity that you're sharing, I'm not saying that you go on YouTube and you talk about all the terrible results that you got certain patients, but you share authentically that, there it is not a plug and play kind of solution. We do need to get labs. We do need to meet with you. You're not going to feel amazing in the first 3 weeks. It takes time. And, being okay with that, I think creates relatability and that respect that you're talking about in a long form content. So I love that.
Yeah, and another part like video you brought up a little bit earlier as you're watching or listening, like this is part of like the holistic approach to what you do. And that is think of what you do. You wouldn't meet a patient in the clinic without getting vitals, without labs, and then give them a solution, right?
Correct.
Their prescription or their like, what do you recommend are the very next
The
best
treatment
steps?
plan.
It's a
Yeah.
process, right? It's a process of a way to go, but you start with vitals. Like ideally, as you're watching or listening right now, you ideally, if you're interested in growing your practice, you get with Jody and her team, but understand it's a process for them to go through. They want to review your vitals. Like, what do you really have going on? What are the things that are working? What are not working? Like, they might want to look at some of your different campaigns. They might look at your website and go through the process to review, take your vitals, to then come up and go, hey, here is your custom solution.
Yeah.
Just like you would probably do in a clinic. Now, you might have this collapse down, like, because, if I walk into your clinic, you might take my blood pressure, you might take my pulse, you might ask me what kind of symptoms I've got, what's going on. But then what would you probably do? You'd probably send me to verify. You wouldn't just trust what I'm saying. You'd go, okay, well, let's get your vitals. And again, there's different types of tests to do for a variety of different things. It's not one test, the same test for every single type of set of symptoms. And so as you look at this right now for growing your practice, is whether you're working with someone like Jody and her team that's amazing. And even if you're like on the fence and maybe you haven't even thought about it, but maybe you're excited to grow your practice beyond the traditional norm, the standard percentage of growth with, standard, medical, standard, number of patients or inquiries coming in. Well, you just might want to seek out Jody and her team, and then they'll go through their process of look at your vitals, look at the labs, and now they'll give you a custom plan. And it may be a great plan for you, but it may not be a perfect plan for you, just like not all health solutions are the perfect plan for every single person either. So those are a couple
I
of
so love that because I have always said there is not one marketing or business issue that you can't compare almost exactly to a medical issue.
Yep.
It is, they really are one and the same. Doctors are very lucky if they could just expand their mindset a little bit and recognize the steps that you take to treat a patient are the steps that you take to treat your business.
Yes,
Almost
absolutely.
identically. So you were so great with that. So let me ask you, because you're really good at this. What if someone's listening today that's feeling stuck or they're feeling overwhelmed or they're just unsure what to do, whether they're starting out or they're trying to reach the next level? What is some advice that you can give those people that are just feeling, I don't know what to do next?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of things. One is ask yourself the question, what if you don't solve it?
Mm.
What
Oh
is
my
that
God.
going to
Yeah,
cost
that's
you?
great.
Right? What is that costing you? Like how long do you want to keep that way? So that's is step in, this is what I did when I went through that process of the 4 days in the hospital heart procedure and then came out. I started that process. The next part of it, Jody, is, one of the things I like to do, and this is kind of an old school way, but this is my way. It's not everybody's way, but it's a way that if you are still, maybe you've tried all kinds of different things that haven't quite worked out. One is ask the question and reflect on it, write it down. Like, what is it costing me to be still in overwhelm, still being in burnout? How's that working for me so far? And get really clear. What else, what is it costing me? Not just in the business, but what is it costing me with my family, with my marriage, with my relationship, with my kids, with my faith, right? With my fitness, and get clear. Take a
Yeah.
holistic 360 view. My coach did that for me, and I'm grateful that she did. And then the other part is then like I still use a handy dandy notebook that my whole life is in these things,
Yeah.
and so I like to journal. Some people
Mhm.
call it journaling. I'm just literally capturing everything that's going on. It's a way that serves me. And so the next thing is, what do you want? What do you really want? And then again, you go dimensions, not just for the business, but ideally you include the business, but then be thinking faith, family, mental, physical, social, spiritual, emotional. And it is a little bit of work, right? It's not like easy to do this, but it's
Right.
also not hard. It just takes, going through the process, or get somebody to help you like Jody and her team to help guide you through a process like this, or ours or others, right? So what do you want in those areas? And then what do you not want? Right. Part of why I chose, I had a company with the 200 employees, and, we were doing 20 some million a year, and, we had over 200,000 clients. Imagine the customer service issues on the good side, but also the
No, I don't
nightmares
want
that we,
to.
right, to deal with every day, like our team, like all of these things. Part of the reason I ended up selling the companies, a part, not the only, but a part was like, I didn't want
Yeah.
this big of a company this way anymore. Right. And that was part of me sitting down doing this exercise. So, what do you not want? Mentally, physically, socially, spiritually, emotionally, financially, for your business, for your clinic, for your practice. What do you not want to be doing anymore? Like, I felt like to a degree, I outgrew some of the things I was continuing to do. And so, after I sold the businesses, did retirement 1.0, Jody, for a little while, I then had clarity of like what I really wanted to do, what I didn't want to do. And that this business evolved out of that, right?
Yeah.
As a result, which is a gift, right? So, what do you want? What do you not want? Then, on top of that, is what do you stand for? And many times people will have, these platitudes on a wall called company core values, and they're usually that. They're platitudes in most companies.
Right.
They're not really the true DNA of an operating system. And again, I know you teach this, you actually help your clients through a process like this. And again, I encourage you, find someone like Jody to have them take you through the blueprint process that they do. But get clear, that's one way to do it on the business. But how about as a human being? We're all human beings. So why not start with you first as a human being? And this, again, part of what one of my coaches offered for me, Jody, that gave me immense clarity is, what do you stand for? And it's your values, essentially. What do you value most? What do you want to put your time into? What do you not want to put your time into? And then when you've got these things really laid out, now it makes it somewhat simple to be able to make good decisions, better decisions. And okay, what will now the business look like? Just because you have a business, like I have a team, as you know, Jody, of 40 some people. My team handles most of the appointments with our clients. My team handles most of the implementation that's being driven day to day, week to week, month to month, quarter to quarter. I'm in a couple main roles that are more what I want to be doing: visionary creator,
Right.
being able to develop relationships, being able to bring people together. And then, I know some of my other strengths where I use me within the system to help the business be stable, but also to grow beyond me, right? And
Right.
that's also part of the reason for things like the book.
Book.
What's going to outlive me? What is something that our team also has the ability? What do our clients get a chance to tune into? So it's a one-to-many strategy that's been thought through. Anyway, there's a few layers of this, but hopefully that gives you a couple good
Oh,
perspectives as you're watching,
absolutely.
listening, and Jody, even for your direct question. Yeah.
No, no, it was wonderful. And I want to tell just a really quick story to illustrate in the medical perspective exactly what you said. So we do these business plan workshops, and it's 4 hours. So it's a lot of effort. It's a lot of work on our part. And I did one with a nurse practitioner, and we mapped out this clinic that was outstanding. I mean, she was going to grow to $8 million in 10 years. She had all these devices. She was really into aesthetics, like all this stuff, right? We're about to hang up, and I said, and I won't say her name, but nurse practitioner lady, what do you love to do? Like, what are your hobbies? And she's, oh, I love to travel. My goal in the next 5 years is to travel 80% of the year. And I said, well, we just built a brick and mortar business with about $2 million worth of devices. She's like, oh, yeah, I don't want that. So we had to wipe it off and start from scratch because she wasn't authentic in the beginning about the lifestyle she wanted. So what I heard from everything that you said was, it isn't hard, but the hard part is taking the time to do it, actually carving into your schedule, your patient schedule, for those doctors listening, those providers listening, in your patient schedule, so nothing gets in the way to do the work you're saying, reflect, and really think about the life that you want. Yeah. Now
Yeah.
you,
And then, oh my gosh, there's so many layers of what you just shared in wisdom. And it also ties, like what you mentioned is, it wasn't until you helped give a clarity moment that she saw another view of it. Because it's easy
right.
to fall into default mode by yourself,
Yes.
right? It's easy to just rinse and repeat because it sounds good, or maybe you even think it's what you should be
Right.
doing, the whole
Should
should
be
all
doing.
over
Yes,
everything, right?
exactly.
And the truth is, when we give ourselves the freedom to tell the truth, right? Dan
Mm,
Sullivan has a great quote, which I think actually is an AA quote, which is the first progress starts by telling the truth.
mm.
But most of the time, we don't have someone that can be like a guide like you were for her is that really what you mean? Or is there something else? Or she seemed to be very focused on the business side, right? And then you opened up a new doorway with, well, what about your lifestyle? Like, what about what else? Your hobbies, like those sorts of things.
Right.
It starts to open this like new synapses versus falling into default, right? So it's the difference between path A is, lean on default thinking, default way of operating, default of how it's been or how you think it should be versus by design of like, okay, what do you really want? For example, this, Jody, until my dad passed forward into his, new life next to my mom up in heaven here a few months back. Every Thursday morning for 5 years, I had breakfast with my dad, and there was no appointment, no client getting in the way of that time. Not one. That was by design. Now, since my dad did pass away, that is now shifted to Wednesday mornings, where my wife and I are meeting with my sister and her husband.
Oh, wow, that's cool.
And that's by design because we
Yeah.
want to deepen the relationship with it's my sister. Family starts to get smaller and smaller. And at this stage in our lives, that's really, really important, right? So getting clarity of what you want and then mapping it out, but go beyond just writing it down as a vision board. I don't believe in these sorts of things personally anymore. I don't even believe in goal setting because most setting puts it out there. It doesn't put it today. So goal achievement is very different than goal setting. And you back goal achievement by actually having it written down and or penciled in. And so in the case of something as simple as my set, that's on my calendar every Wednesday for the next 5 years. So there's no appointment getting in there unless it's an emergency, or I have to make a conscious choice to take my sister out and put something else in that might have a potential to pop in. Which
Right.
again, it's flexible enough that if something happened, let's say with my son or my daughter or my grandbaby or something, or a medical situation, I'm sure she'd be okay if I said, hey, is it all
I'm
right if
sure.
this
Right.
Wednesday we don't get together? But it's more rare versus how I did it in the old way of Dan, the old version of this, without backing the goal achievements that I want with what I want, what I don't want, et cetera, the things, and then put it on the calendar. I would shoehorn all kinds of stuff in, including dates with my wife at the time, random, I'll get it. I'll spend time with the kids when I can. I'll spend time with my wife when I can. The business is, I got to fill all these appointments and the business always. So today, actually, we just did this in a 4-week sprint that we do with our clients where literally we start with the lifestyle, we start with hobbies, we start with these things first because it's very new for people and very uncomfortable actually, and then back it up and put it into a calendar tentatively for a quarter. And that's an exercise that is not easy. It's pretty simple, but it's amazing the freedom that people get, Jody, from that type. And again, I know you teach versions of this and do this with some of your clients too, is when you build in your stuff you really want that is important, like family, faith, friendships, marriage, health. Like my fitness is in my calendar every morning between 4 and 6 a.m. every day. There's nothing else getting in those. Now, some people, oh, of course not. Well, I'm West Coast, so I technically could be doing appointments at 4 in the morning or 6 in the morning because that's 8 o'clock, depending on what coast somebody's on.
Right.
But it's already scheduled in, so it's non-negotiable to get added in during those times. Same with the travel with my wife. We're coming to Orlando, right? We've got a group of us going to come together, partners, clients. You've attended our mini events that we do, these gatherings. That's on the calendar. There's nothing getting in that time. And then on the
Right.
back of it, we've got some personal time built in for T and our family, right? So
Awesome.
so anyway, by design, not by default. And look to work with someone like Jody who can be a guide
Oh, you're
to
so kind.
challenge you from hobbies to interest to health, et cetera, these other things. Yeah, this
And
is all.
I'll tell you, there's an extra layer of difficulty for creative people, and providers are definitely in that realm. And that is, there's so much to do. And so I want to come back to the workshop because I want you to share about it, because you are masterful at helping people simplify their thoughts down to an actionable level. And that's the thing that I see with providers most often. It's not even that they don't have a vision of what they want their life to be, although that definitely plays a part. Sometimes they want to do too much. And so I help you with this way. And next thing you know, you got 47 services on your treatment menu, and there's just no way to market that. So can you tell us now? I know this is a podcast and it's going to be on longer than past March, the end of March. But for those people that hear this prior to, can you tell us a little bit about the workshop you're doing in Orlando?
Yeah, and we do these once or twice a year. So it's designed to be very intimate, one day, because I believe why have something that's 3 to 5 days when you can get it done in one? To your point of simplicity. Plus,
Right.
most high performers appreciate it,
Yeah.
and it gives them freedom to do, focus on some other things. And I believe that there's only a certain amount the mind and heart can really hold on to in
Yeah.
a
I
certain
agree.
period of time, too. So we do this compressed version. It's really the short version is simplified scaling with less stress. And right, so if that resonates with you at all for your practice or your business, depending on what niches you're in, and you'd like to learn more, at the end of the day, you walk out with an implementation blueprint for the next quarter, engineered from 90 days, 30 days to 7 days. You will identify the top 3 to 5 main focuses to build into for that quarter, what things to let go of, and then also walk out with some amazing partnerships to
Hmm.
facilitate deal making. And we like to mix this as an experience beyond just like someone sitting there, taking notes. This is, like this is a nice banter with Jody and I. But imagine we were able to facilitate something like this with and for you for the whole day,
Yeah.
because you will be in conversations connecting with people, you'll be collaborating with people, you'll be brainstorming with other peers that are running 7 8 figure type businesses or practices or both. It's like we pop popcorn for the whole day. It's less about someone speaking and more about the interactions and the connections, collaboration. So if that resonates with you, here's a simple way. Send us an email at help@breakthrough3x.com, help@breakthrough3x.com, and just have in the reply one day. So depending on when you're seeing this or hearing it, just send us that note with one day details, and we'll send you the current information of what's happening, how you can participate, see if there's a good fit, and go through that process. So,
Awesome.
yeah,
Awesome. And could I get the link to register for the March one so we can put that in the show notes for those people that hear it?
absolutely.
Awesome.
Absolutely. Yep.
Fantastic. Well, I will be there. And so if anyone listens to the podcast and is close to Orlando and wants to meet both Dan and I, well, by all means, that's a reason enough to come, right?
Absolutely. And we provide lunch, have
Yeah,
dinner. Again, it's about the
it's a lot of
interaction.
fun.
We, as you know, Jody, are facilitating the deepening of quality relationships,
Yeah,
that are peers and like-minded, that, really it's designed to help create community
yeah,
while at the same time rapid breakthroughs in the
absolutely.
way we do it. So we'd love to
Awesome.
have you. Make sure to get with Jody. You'll see the info down in the notes. And if you have questions, help@breakthrough3x.com, and just send me the one day details in a message, and we'll send that over.
Perfect. Perfect. All right. Well, I could sit here and talk to you all day long. However, I know you're a busy guy. So I'm going to end this with one last thing. So,
Okay.
those that listen to the podcast know that I completely stole my ending from my favorite podcaster, who is Steve Bartlett, who has Diary of a CEO. And I asked my last guest to give me a question for my next guest, but they don't know who you are. So I have a question for you from my
Okay.
last guest. And it is, what do you think is the single moment in your life that defined who you were going to be?
Oh, that's an easy one, actually. My dad took me to my first seminar when I was 10. It was at Eastern Michigan University. It was a coaches clinic for high school and college coaches. I was the only kid in the room. And I remember the coach, his name was Ron Ostrike, and it was a bunch of the college athletes. And there's a manual that you were given to everybody. I still have the manual. My dad saved it, and it's in my storage unit. And there was a section in the manual that had a profound, prolific impact. But that whole experience there, just it opened my heart, my eyes. It got me inspired that I wanted to play professional sports, college sports, be in the coaching industry, but then the mental game being such and probably the most important thing in anything we ever choose to do.
Wow.
And in this manual, here's what it said that I'll quote, which is success in baseball and in life is over 90% mental. The remaining is physical.
Wow.
So master the mental game is what it said. That, and then, there was more to it, but that was the thing that stood out the most, and to this day stands out the most. And I think that many of us, including me, now that I'm closer to 60 than 50, Jody, and I'm on the, call it the last nine of my life, the last nine holes, in reflecting on this and watching my dad pass forward recently. I think that I realize now even more how important the mental game is for all of us in everything that we do. And also that the best way to elevate, the best way to go to that next level is to also not do it by ourselves, is to have coaches. And I got a chance to understand that as a 10-year-old in this clinic, because I remember it vividly going from exercise station to exercise station that they were teaching. And it wasn't the same coach teaching every one of these stations. There was a hitting coach, there was a fielding coach, there was a base running coach, there was a throwing coach, there was a pitching coach, there was a third base coach for signs, there was a bunting coach. All of these different elements that are part of the game all required some different type of coaching. And that's life, and that's business. And so wherever you're at in your journey, raise the mental game, and the easiest way to raise that game is to get some support and coaching.
All right, guys, can you see why this podcast, I was so excited to talk to Dan, because everything that you share comes from that place. Like, as you're describing that story, and I've been following you now for about a year and a half, 2 years, and I consume just about everything you put out there because I really love it. But now I get it. I get where it all began, and it's beautiful, and I really appreciate you sharing that with all of us, because whether people, and obviously no one's listening at 10 years old, but even if you're 90 years old, it's never too late to get that point and take that into your life. So thank you.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure, Jody, and always a pleasure to be with you. And I'm looking forward to seeing you at our event coming up.
Yes, awesome. Okay, well, have a wonderful day. Thank you for being here today and sharing all your knowledge. And if anyone is out there listening and needs support in marketing or business development, I really, really recommend Breakthrough 3X. They're a phenomenal company. They do a great job and they're great partners. So give them a call.
Thanks, Jody.
Thank you for listening to Beyond Hormones, the business of wellness. I hope that you're walking away with fresh ideas and real strategies you can use to grow your practice with profit and purpose. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to follow the show so you never miss a conversation. And if something you heard today resonated with you, do me a favor, share this episode with a friend or a colleague. It's one of the best ways you can support the show, and it might be exactly what they need to hear right now. If you want even more tools and support, go ahead and head over to acceleratedmedicalpractices.com. Until next time, keep doing the work that matters. Your patients need you, and I am cheering you along every step of the way.